Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. After thinking more about the Model S battery at the Plaid delivery event, I've come to the conclusion that something doesn't quite add up. I mean it literally. The math just isn't agreeing with me. I wanted to compare the new battery pack with previous Tesla packs and see if we could discover any anomalies as to how the Model S battery does stand out, and that something significant must have occurred at the battery level in order for these anomalies to stand out so much. I decided to take all the data I could gather and estimate, and then generate a table of the new Model S Plaid and long-range specifications in order to compare them with other battery packs in a relative way. The main thing that I've picked up on is that these new battery packs seem to weigh significantly less than the previous battery packs. I calculated the weight difference by comparing the weight of the previous Model S Performance and Long Range, and noticed a large discrepancy that must be attributed to the battery pack. Using some deductive reasoning, I've estimated the packs for the new Model S to weigh 1,250 pounds for the Plaid and 1,100 pounds for the new Long Range. The previous 100 kWh battery used in the Model S Raven, Long Range and Performance was 1,378 pounds. The weight difference is mainly noticed between the Long Range versions. Although the Plaid battery is also slightly lighter than the Raven Performance, there's not as large a difference in the range or performance from the previous Performance version relative to price. And you might think, yes, well, a lot of the price is the new interior and design, but then that doesn't hold true for the Long Range. The price difference is only $10,000 for the new shaped Long Range, compared to the Plaid costing nearly $40,000 more than the previous Performance version. A lot of people think the weight gain is not in the battery, but is due to the actual new design of the car. But then that would not explain the discrepancy between the fact the long-range version is over 320 pounds lighter and the Plaid is only 175 pounds lighter, despite the weight savings from the new motors. As the long range doesn't use the new motors, then the battery weight difference from the Plaid to the Performance is actually only about 100 pounds lighter, whereas the long range is over 300 pounds lighter. Make no mistake, the weight loss is at the battery level. Some people are saying that they spoke to some Tesla employees at the event that confirmed they were 18650 batteries. There doesn't appear to be any official confirmation or proof of that. Also, considering it's such a major part of the company, I don't think information like that would be handed out casually by employees. As far as I can tell, I don't believe anything official has been mentioned about 18650 batteries being in the new S and X. The Plaid has absolutely amazing performance, but less range than the long range version, despite the battery pack weighing over 10% more. The fact the battery pack weighs more, I would have thought, would imply that there are more batteries inside the pack, and a higher level of kilowatt hours. I thought it was rumoured that the Plaid would have a 120 kilowatt hour battery, and the Plaid Plus a 150 kilowatt hour. I'm not sure where I remember reading that, but if the Plaid had a 120 kilowatt hour battery, and we're assuming the new long range has 100 kilowatt hours, then that's 20% more battery, but only 10% more weight. Therefore, to make up for this discrepancy, it might mean that we're using two different chemistries in these batteries. I think the long range is using the cathode with manganese and nickel, and the Plaid version is using the high concentration nickel cathode. Therefore, able to get that much more power from only slightly more weight. Now, some people are thinking this is what Tesla's done, changed their chemistry with the 18650 batteries, and made them that much more efficient. If that is the case, then why do they need a different battery pack if using the same size batteries? Also, if they were to change the chemistry and go tabless even, as some people are suggesting, then that has got to be a lot of work. Considering it was hard enough to do with the 4680 batteries, why would they want to invest time, money, energy, R&D, sacrificing other opportunities to work on their oldest battery form? Why would Tesla take the line down for half a year if not to move over to their 4680 batteries now? Tesla was supposedly going to open Berlin in July, with plans on using 4680 batteries from the get-go. Considering the comparatively fewer numbers Tesla will sell with the S and X, it seems highly possible that they could have gone with the 4680s now. Elon has said they do intend to move to 4680s eventually for all their models. Why take the line down now for 6 months, only to have to do it again in another 2 years to change over to the 4680s, if you haven't already? Except there is one thing. We do have a little discrepancy when it comes to range. Why would Tesla's 100 kWh long-range version get 405 miles of range, and the 120 kilowatt hour Plaid with denser batteries get only 390 miles of range. Again, this doesn't add up, but there is another theory people are saying that the Plaid is not showing its true range yet, and there'll be an over-the-air update that will eventually improve the range, even as high as what we're expecting from the Plaid Plus, some people are speculating. The Plaid is just so good now already that people are willing to buy it, and the waiting list is already long enough. What if in a few months the range suddenly jumps to mid-400s or something for an over-the-air update? It would be crazy. And to be honest, if this was all possible, then doing it in this style probably would be the best path to take. It would simply mean you can generate all this free publicity when you add 10% more range onto your cars with a simple over-the-air update. Seriously though, look at the price difference of the long range and Plaid. We're talking $50,000. What's the difference between the cars? The Plaid has the new high-performance motors with the carbon-sleeved rotors. Presumably the Plaid has upgraded suspension and brakes. But where else has the money gone? They even have the same 19-inch wheels as standard. We're looking for $50,000 somewhere. Where has that gone? Okay, sure, I've said this before, that the Model S long range has become an incredibly good car for the money, especially when it has a $10,000 tax incentive too. But people are still willing to pay the extra $50,000 or $60,000 with tax incentive for Plaid. A car that has less range, but also only slightly better 0 to 60 time than the previous performance model. Okay, sure, it does become exponentially more difficult to reduce 0 to 60 time when you're getting to numbers that low, but as a result of all that extra power, likely coming from more kilowatt hours in the battery pack, then isn't it possible there should be additional range too? I mean, look at the Roadster. The performance of that is accompanied with a much longer range, as was the Plaid Plus. Anyway, I created this table for some statistics, and considering the only number it would appear we get from the battery pack relative to the other battery packs is the reduction in weight, with some calculations, I would say the calculations would be within one standard deviation of the actual weight, implying even if it's somewhat wrong, it will be close enough to still ring true for the points I'm trying to make. As you can see in this table, I have all the car's main specs, along with the weight of the battery packs. I then calculated all these specifications relative to the battery weight, again, because this is the only detail we're able to work out about the battery. As you can see in this graph, with battery weight to top speed, these numbers represent the top speed of the car per pound of battery. Now this is where it gets interesting. Look at how high the performance is for Plaid. This is a really high top speed, but of course, remember it is exponential too. It becomes much harder to get higher top speeds. 200 miles an hour is really high, by the way, and very impressive. To have achieved such a jump must be through some breakthrough. The top speed per pound of the Plaid is still higher than the Model 3s using 2170 batteries. And of course the Model 3 are able to achieve these speeds at a lower weight to the Model S. A fair comparison now is the increase in performance from these new batteries is the top speed per pound compared to the previous Model S performance. The Plaid has 35% higher top speed relative to pound of battery. Not only that, but even the new long-range Model S was also significantly higher than even the performance Model S. Yet when we compare the weight of the range, we can clearly see one outlier amongst the rest, the Model S long range. For battery weight to miles of range ratio is so much higher than the others, even much higher than a Model 3 long range, and bear in mind, this does not factor in the Model 3 being so much lighter, yet the Model S still gets that much better range. I don't think anyone can argue with this graph. It clearly shows just how much more range the Model S battery pack is delivering per pound of weight. This is a significantly high range. But why is the Model S Plaid so low compared to the long range, despite it having a bigger battery? Well, I think this is why people have the theory that the Model S Plaid will later release more range, as it does seem relatively low compared to the long range. Look at the comparison between the older long range and performance, with the same battery size. So we would expect perhaps 450 miles there potentially, particularly if the long range and Plaid are using 4680s, and the Plaid just happens to be using the higher nickel version. As that's also the version being used in the semi-truck, it would therefore have the best range per weight too. So if the 0 to 60 time is basically at its physical capacity of getting tyres to stick to the road, and perhaps the range of the Plaid has been suppressed, then top speed so far is probably what holds the most merit to the Plaid thus far. However, the next chart will be of similar use. If we compare all the car's horsepower per weight of battery pack, well, as you can see, the Plaid just tears apart. Not only that, even the long-range version beats the old performance Model S. 50% more horsepower per pound in the new long range. That is a major increase. Yes, you might argue the new motors help the Plaid too, but it doesn't appear that the long-range version is even using the new motors, and it still manages to achieve this outstanding lead. When we look at the price per pound too, then we clearly see the Plaid miles ahead. Now, this might be due to the fact that they have high nickel content 4680s. Although they do cost a bit more, it's not significantly more in materials, as the manganese cathodes are still 2/3 nickel too. I guess Tesla are always going to try and stretch a premium price for the high nickel cathodes. Anyway, as you can see in this graph, the price of the car relative to the weight of the battery is very high in the Plaid. I don't think they could justify this with 18650. These are 4680s. Yet people are still willing to buy the Plaid even if they thought they were 18650. I don't even think if it was a new special battery pack that could allow 4680s for Plaid and 18650 for long range, that would have added up either. This long range spec is so far ahead of the other batteries too, and due to its weight, it can't be LFP, so it must be the manganese version. Also, Tesla will only be selling the Plaid for some time. I don't think we will start seeing the long range version out until later. Perhaps the battery chemistry required for the long range batteries are not quite ready, but likely Tesla wants to sell more Plaid versions too. I mean, look at the graph. It's also another illustration of which ones have the most profit margin. Plaid will be cheaper to build than the previous Model S, at least when Tesla perfect their lines, and will have a huge profit margin. It really could be about 50% if using 4680s. Not only that, people also pay so much more for an expensive Model 2. So although they may not be selling as many S's as a Model 3, Tesla make 4 times as much profit per sale. Tesla make 4 times as much profit perhaps per sale, which adds up. It will also start to add significantly to Tesla's quarterly profits, but likely not at a noticeable level until Q4, particularly if we're also going to be seeing the X. Now, when we compare the weight of the battery to the size of the batteries, in other words, how many kilowatt hours from battery per pound of the battery, obviously we don't know exactly the battery size of the new Model S, but the long range would likely be similar to the previous one. Also, it's likely the battery size will be larger for the Plaid due to its heavier weight and price. Thus, 100 kilowatt hour battery for the long range and 120 kilowatt hour battery for the Plaid. Anyway, there is no denying how much they stand out. I mean, you can see here how much more battery size the 2170 was getting from the same weight, but the new Model S is an even larger jump. This must have been something significant. It doesn't appear that Tesla have gone with any gigacasting molds to save weight. The weight saving all seems to have happened at the battery, and Tesla even announced a new battery pack. It simply doesn't make sense to close down again later to use 4680 batteries. There is literally a 4680 factory in walking distance at the Cato Road facility. Wouldn't it make sense to use them there rather than ship them to Germany? These battery packs that Tesla are using have created, as Elon would say, a step change in performance. And I think Tesla have told the fans subtly if they are willing enough to work it out for themselves, whilst at the same time Tesla are not announcing anything exciting for Wall Street. With the legacy auto industry, for Mercedes or BMW, it's always their S-Class or 7 Series that are the first to get the new technology. Should it not be the same for Tesla's S and X models? At this stage, even the smallest amount of extra information we find out about these batteries will quickly enable us to connect the dots. But a teardown sure would be exciting. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.